Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Vladimir Baryev, autism pediatrician, and welcome to the Autism Demystified program. Today, we are very fortunate to have a guest with us, Kelley Coleman. Now, Kelley is a featured film development executive turned author and disability advocate. She serves on committees for Children's Hospital Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Unified School District, and Canine Companions. Her book, Everything That No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child, Your Guide to the Essential Systems, Services, and Supports, stems from her own parenting experience, giving parents the tools to spend less time navigating the stuff and more time just loving their kids exactly as they are. So, Kelley, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And I've been going down the rabbit hole of your YouTube channel, and I love that you have episodes that are 2 or 3 minutes long. I'm like, oh my gosh, people can watch this instead of scrolling for 3 minutes, and they're just terrific. So I'm really excited to contribute to your universe.
I am beyond excited that you like the content on the YouTube channel because that was the goal. It was get to the point, tell people what they need to know, and move along. I really like keeping it short and sweet. That's my MO.
Yep, I like it. We need that.
Appreciate it so much. So, why don't we begin with letting our audience know what inspired you to write this book?
So I was a writer by trade before book writing, and so that helped. I have 2 amazing kiddos. They're the best of friends and climb all over each other and are goofy and weird and wonderful in all the best ways. Our older son is 12, almost 13. Our younger son is 11, and he has multiple disabilities, including autism amongst his list, a yet undiagnosed genetic syndrome, cerebral palsy, microcephaly, cortical vision impairment, has a feeding tube, sensory processing, auditory processing, fine motor, gross motor. Like, he is just like, I am just going to check all the boxes. I'm an overachiever. And so really our experience is not identical to possibly anyone's in the world. We've done every test science has available. We don't know what his particular genetic syndrome is, but we have so much overlap with so many people, and we have been very fortunate to be able to access so many of the supports and accommodations that he needs to thrive. He is just like, this is his world and we're living in it. He's doing great. And I'm so passionate about equalizing the access to information that you can understand and use. There's, as you know, there's no one journey. It would be great if there was one answer on how to do everything, but there's not. So I really wanted a book that people could understand all the boring, the paperwork and the planning and the stuff that nobody wants to do, but we have to do, and really understand it in a way and give a springboard for asking all these questions of how to build this journey for yourself, your family, and your child.
Wow, that is such a powerful driving force and motivation for you to be able to go out and bring this out into the world. This book, according to the Amazon description, is 300 pages long. How long did it take you to write this?
So I had a year from when I made my deal with my publisher. I had a year to write the first draft, and it was partly just sitting down and writing, but also there are interviews with over 40 experts in here. And it was such a pleasure to connect with experts in many different areas, many of whom are disabled themselves, and letters from fellow parents and the templates that have been sitting on my computer with just collecting dust for the last decade that I've created. So in some ways, it took me 11 years to write. In some ways, it took me under a year to write. It feels like a collective victory for all of us because there was really so much involved and so many people involved.
Wow, that's incredible. It's so beautiful how you mentioned it. It's all those life years of experience that actually went into writing this book. The actual writing time is less important than
Yeah.
the the experiences that go into it. And speaking of those experiences now, do you feel what would you say to parents what in your personal experience, like since you mentioned that everyone's experience is so unique and different, one size only fits one when it comes to how to approach these things and how we respond to them. So in your experience, what was the m- most surprising thing about the challenges that you encountered in getting access to all of the things that your son needed?
Oh gosh, everything was a surprise. The ridiculous amount of paperwork that just keeps coming. Like, I had no idea of that piece of all of that practical stuff. And also the challenge of like unearthing all of this ableism, whether it was in myself that I was like, I didn't realize it was there, but like once you start unpacking it, I think we all unfortunately have some level of it that we need to unpack. And just the reactions of people, and even people who you expect would be there and roll up their sleeves. Sometimes people are freaked out when you have a kid who is disabled, who behaves differently, who moves through the world differently. And that can be shocking at times, because the reality is my kid is awesome and joyful and communicates in his own way. And when people take the time to meet him where he is, he dazzles people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember one of the things that really drew me to inviting you on the channel is your discussion of visible and invisible disabilities. I was really moved and touched by that. And would you be able to elaborate a little bit on that for our audience?
Yes, and I actually was going to bring up this exact point with you, because you have a great, just a few minute episode about talking about disabilities that are visible and that are not visible. And you also bring up a point that I forget to bring up. So thank you for reminding me. There are plenty of people who have both. My kid is someone, he has a list of disabilities that you can see by looking at him. He also has disabilities that you cannot see. And for us, it was important to get the autism diagnosis in addition to all these other diagnoses he already had. Some people, like my son, you can look at them and you can reasonably assume they are disabled, whether there is a mobility advice device, a communication difference, a physical difference. Not hard to spot on my kid. And yep, that's part of who he is. For many folks, they are presenting out to the world as though they are not disabled. And for many folks, especially who are neurodivergent, that can involve a lot of masking, which means they're not less neurodivergent inside. They are just presenting on the outside in the expected way. And it's an interesting conversation when people talk about the severity, quote unquote, of the autism, the neurodivergence, etc., because how I experience my son's autism is different than how he experiences his autism. And regardless of whether or not is visible to someone on the street, to friends, to coworkers, to family members, we need to remember that an individual whose disabilities are not visible, they are experiencing they're experiencing their own disabilities in a profound way. It could be quote unquote just dyslexia, which no, for them, if that is their thing, it could be easy to cope with. It could be tremendously challenging. So, for folks who do have invisible disabilities, it's not fair for us to assume how they are experiencing that disability. And the more we can get our information about disability from disabled people, is such this remarkable shorthand to educating ourselves and learning and doing better, which is really exciting.
You just so wonderfully colored, illustrated, and exemplified that ancient Stoic philosophy of it's not necessarily what happens to you, but how you respond to what happens. It's
Mhm,
not necessarily what your level of disability is, but it's your perception of it that
mhm,
really can make a big difference. And thank you for mentioning that that it to us, what may not seem as major, for the person experiencing it, maybe far,
mhm.
far more significant for them. So throughout this journey for yourself and your son, particularly as a mom, have you had one like guiding light, that individual to help you go through the process, or has it been like a series of individuals, or has it been a team of individuals who have been with you over time? How as far as getting you support to be able to get the most for your son?
Yes, so I am incredibly fortunate. First and foremost, I have a husband who is a true partner in all things. I have, by design and with discussion on both of our part, taken on the bulk of the caregiving responsibility and job, and that is how it falls in many families. He has been a tremendous partner in all things for a long time. At the beginning of our journey, which started when our son was an infant, I really just felt like I was falling down a pit, and that is a horrible feeling because I felt so inadequate. I felt like I had no idea how to do any of this because I had no idea how to do any of this. And I was just getting these messages of like, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Oh, that's the worst. How are you going to do this? I could never do this." Like that is actually never helpful. Um, Even if people come in and say, "Hey, I don't know what to say, but I want to be here for you. So I'm going to call you. You don't have to call me back, but I want to be here for you." Um, I have a close friend who lives in a different state, whose child is about a year older, who has cerebral palsy, who has some similar, some different presentations than my son, who's really, been my rock through this. And over the years have accumulated friends who also have children with different disabilities. And it's been really essential having all of these families to really contribute to one another, to share information. And also, from the very beginning, our pediatrician has been a superstar. She has literally saved our child's life. And in the very beginning, when I just had the gut feeling our son was an infant, and I just kept saying, like, something's up, something's up. He was passing all the tests and seemed to be doing well, but I just had that gut feeling that something was going on. And she said very early on, and I think I talk about this in the book as well, she said, "Come in here as often as you want. We will never turn you away. We will never tell you you're crazy. We will always listen to you. We will make notes. We will do the tests, and we will tell you what we see, but keep coming in." And she has been such an important ally, not because she has had every answer. For kids like ours, it would be great, but very often no one has all the answers. And it is just this huge swirl of things that you are sorting through. But our pediatrician has said, "I am here for you. I will walk this path with you. And we will do our best to take the best care of your child." He's now 11 years old. He is thriving. And if your pediatrician is not listening to you, is not hearing your concerns, is not willing to walk this potentially very hard path with you, um, there is nothing wrong with meeting with other pediatricians, talking to other families, seeing who they like. It might be a doctor who is specific to working with disabled kids. It might not. Ours is just a general pediatrician who happens to be curious and caring and passionate about her job. Um, Expect your team to be partners with you and to include you as a partner. Include them as a partner. listen, be open to your doctor saying something that you've not considered, that you might have disagreed with in the past. But when we can be open and see one another as partners, it becomes a massive team. And we're really fortunate that we've been able to assemble that.
That's beautiful. First, I want to say, yay, go
Yeah,
pediatricians.
yes,
I am
yes.
on team general pediatrics. I love hearing the positive outcomes that families have had with a pediatrician who listens, who pays attention, who's able to, most importantly, follow up, because
Hmm.
first impression is never the last one. It's always
Hmm.
about where does the story go? Where is the story leading? Are things getting a lot better? Are things getting
Hmm.
a lot worse? Just because we don't hear back from family doesn't mean that everything is fine.
Hmm.
We still have to reach out and find out, is everything actually fine? Being proactive.
Hmm.
One thing that you mentioned with the pediatrician, no one individual will have all the answers for you regarding a child's condition or disability. I actually want to tell you something. Sometimes, not only will no one person have all the answers, but when it comes to specific questions about disabilities, since medicine is not perfect, from the medical perspective, there will be questions that you yourself will have, parents will have about their child's health that nobody has the answer to. Not only that, one doctor, but no doctors out there. And in those cases, I like to remind families, just because I don't know the answer, and no one else knows the answer, I am still willing to be here with you and still listen to what is happening and the experience. And we could write the answer ourselves. We could figure it out as we go along because we are working together. The collaborative partnership that continues that relationship going back and forth is what's going to be the answer. The relationship will become the answer that you are searching for your child. We're not researchers necessarily going to enroll you in a research trial, although that may be necessary at some point. But we're not going to be doing that necessarily, but we will have that collaborative relationship and we will get to the answer by working together. Or if there is no answer, we'll both understand that there's no answer, but we'll come as close to solution and resolution that we can.
Yes. And being collaborative, exactly like you just said, I could talk about like collaborating with your clinicians, with your school team, the whole collaboration thing all day. And remembering that at whatever age, your child is a huge part of that team. Even our son, as an infant, no infant is going to be giving you robust feedback and conversation in a medical meeting ever. Um, but we can follow our child's cues. We are not trying to quote unquote fix anybody. Children are not broken. That is not what we do. But we are looking to our children to see what makes them thrive, what makes them come alive, what makes them the best version of themselves. I'm not trying to make either of my kids the best version of me, but what is the best version of them? For some of our kids, we need to recalibrate every preconception we had of who our children might be. We're not giving up on having dreams for them. Those dreams might be recalibrated sometimes on a daily basis. I have one kid who communicates with a device, who is took years of intensive therapy that he enjoyed for him to be able to walk. He spends his days watching airplanes for hours if he could. I have another son who does magic and plays the tuba. Like, we don't know how our kids are going to turn out.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's about enjoying the ride and the journey. It's not necessarily the destination, but the travel along the way, the growing up with them as parents. Because even ourselves, we're not fully developed. When we have kids, we are developing just along with them. Just as they're growing, we're changing as people, as well as just as they are. They're just doing it much faster than we are because they're children.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't it be nice if we reached a point and we're like, I'm good, I got life figured out?
Done.
No, that is not a thing. And it's so exciting to watch our children become themselves, and also, like you said, to enjoy and to have fun, and to acknowledge and own the hard stuff, My hard stuff is not my kid's personality and who he is as a human and who he will grow up to be. It is being on hold for an hour, which I was last Friday with the medical supply company. It is, I literally have this giant mountain of paperwork right next to my computer. It is the fights with the school. It is the lack of accessibility out in the world. When we can name the hard things, we are able to then like put those in a box so that we can then enjoy our children. And you know what? Watching airplanes for a long amount of time is a joy. And if I'm so focused on all um, the heart is still there. It's never going away. We've got a lot of added challenge in our lives, but I can put that to the side and just enjoy my kids.
Absolutely. I love how you clearly articulate the concept of hard things are not always relative to the disability part. The hard things can be the man-made parts that we put around our kids' disabilities, like
Yes.
accessing services hard, being on the phone forever. Don't get me started on that. It's hard for both sides, by the way.
Yeah.
Parents have to be on the phone for hours, and then so are the pediatricians on the phone for hours trying to get approved prior authorizations approvals
Oh, yeah.
for those families. That all happens behind the scene. I try to keep my patients shielded from hearing me complain about that. But it's one final thing that I wanted to bring up and ask you about actually is that the I hear a lot from families of just how surprised they are with another hard that was a big surprise to them, and that is in the educational realm. Children with disabilities getting special education, just how young their teachers and caregivers are, and the rate of turnover of those caregivers and teachers over time. Can you speak a little bit about that in your experience with it?
Yes. So countrywide and statewide, and certainly depending on your location, it can be worse. There are statistics. We are in a caregiving crisis, and retaining teachers, especially coming out of COVID, is harder than ever. There are not the supports in place to even pay a lot of these people a living wage. So the turnover is real. The challenge of finding and retaining quality caregivers who are trained, who we trained and then they stick around, it is very real. Some states offer supports to help keep that in place. Other states, you are completely on your own. Really connecting with other families is a great way, connecting with local families, radically sharing resources. Um, is a great way to try and tap into these networks of care to try and find out which schools have the teacher retention, which agencies will be able to provide that aid at school, who will be likely to stick around. Man, I wish there was a solution for that, because caregiving is just in free fall right now.
Absolutely. We at least named it. At least we named that hard. We didn't solve it.
Yes.
We at least named it. We did the first part of it.
It feels good to just say it so that we're
Yeah.
not thinking, oh, it's just me.
Mm-mm.
And when we start with validating the hard, like, that's not nothing. It's not a solution yet, but it's not nothing.
Yeah, we haven't figured it out yet is the key word at the end of that phrase,
Yes.
because we will continue to fight until our final days
Yep.
to do the best that we can to find a solution. It's a painful irony, I feel, that in these kids who are so highly dependent on a routine and a consistency, that they're the ones who have their caregivers stripped out from underneath them because of the system, that it's hard to retain them going from one year to the next. I find it
Yes,
to be like a very painful irony, actually.
absolutely. And for those caregivers, there was a study from the National Institutes of Health that came out not too distant past, about mental health of caregivers of children with intellectual disabilities. As you know, autism may or may not come with an intellectual disability. But parents of kids with intellectual disability, the dads were 66% of the dads reported experienced depression and or anxiety. In the moms, depression and or anxiety was at 94%. I read that statistic and I thought that seems low. And 94% is just about everyone. I think both of those are very low. What we can take away from that as caregivers is that we need to find ways to not only support our own mental health, not only connect with others, not only go to therapy, but to recognize that within ourselves and to have people in our lives that will recognize that within us. It is not if, it is when. And know that this will happen to you. And if you're good right now, put some supports in place, talk to some friends, let them know this will happen and you want them to come to you when they see it.
Absolutely. The default position that parents experience when dealing with a disability in their child is isolation. I want to keep my child to myself. We want to be away from others because it's difficult to be out in public with them. That's the default. And that is the default that leads to depression and anxiety, which makes things worse.
Yes.
For caring for the child. It's beautiful that you named that one as well. A very critical point. Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was truly an honor and a pleasure speaking with you. I want to remind all of our viewers to go out and get her book ASAP, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child. It is roughly in the ballpark between $15 and $16 on Amazon.com today. Get your copy, please. And parents, navigate autism with confidence. Contact my office if you are searching for a pediatrician in the Staten Island area who specializes in working with children with autism. Kelley, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so very much for coming and speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me. I love everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.